Hopefully, everyone can see the chat message here. And then I'm also going to put your website.
It's a great time as folks are joining to grab. What time is it? It is 1:00 where I am at. So I'm not sure where it is where you are, but I feel like it's lunchtime. So grab a snack, coffee.
You are well known for grabbing snacks and eating.
Oh, we can talk about that, how in every weekly mentor conversation, I was like, hold on, Cynthia, before we talk about the business, let me go grab a snack.
Yeah. And I was right there with you. I love it. All righty. So I'm going to, folks will be joining in as we start, but I don't want to run out of time. I want to start on time in respect of everyone's time as business owners. Time is money. And I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. I want to say thank you so much for joining me for this candid conversation and dialogue about growth and strategic planning and what you have experienced in the last 18 or 12 months, in the future 6 months that are already planned out, and what we discovered during our sessions of how you've accomplished so much since graduating from Goldman Sachs 1 Million Black Women program. And I'm thrilled to have you. We had so many people who were interested in this conversation. Like I said, we had 121, probably 122 registrants for this webinar, which means that this is a hot topic and people are very curious as to how you did it. So welcome, Dynasti.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and really excited to have this conversation, to be candid about the journey that I've been on over the last 12 months and what the journey is looking like going forward, and to talk about what it looks like to grow and what I would call both grow gracefully, but also fall gracefully too, in some ways as business owners. So.
Agreed. Well, I'm happy to have you here. So what I'd love to do is let you introduce yourself formally and your company and what you do. And then I'll share a bit about what I do for those who may join who don't know who I am or what Start.Pivot.Grow is or my firms. But please introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Dynasti Hunt Harris, and I'm the CEO and founder of Tayden Impact Partners. And we are an organizational development and DEI consulting firm that is really focused on how do we transform workplaces from the inside out, specifically in the social sector. So our primary clients are folks that work in the nonprofit, philanthropy, association, and foundation space, really thinking about what does it mean to create a space and a work environment where that impact is both internal and actually impacts what you do externally in terms of the communities that you serve. I am also a mom, which will be a relevant piece of this conversation because I am a mom of a 21-month-old. And as you can imagine, for those who signed up for the webinar, you're probably thinking, wait, she did this in 18 months and her daughter is also 21 months. So we can have a good conversation about what it's like to do that while being a parent.
A new parent at that.
A new parent.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. And for those of you who have joined, my name is Cynthia Nevels. I am the president of Integrality, which is a consulting firm, business management consulting firm that's been around for 23 years, a very long time. I've served, I can't count how many small businesses, it's thousands over the 23 years. Some names you know, some names you don't. But I've been able to work with so many innovative companies for a very long time and helping them overcome challenges and barriers in growing their business. And I've been lucky enough to be able to join the Goldman Sachs team with the 10,000 Small Business as a senior business advisor when they launched here in Dallas 10 years ago, and then progressed to the national program with Goldman Sachs 1 Million Black Women Black in Business program. And I've been a business advisor with them for 6 cohorts now, from beginning as well until present. I also am the founder of Start.Pivot.Grow, which is an accelerator here in Dallas, Texas, that has been serving small, mid-sized businesses since the pandemic, primarily focused on how do I help entrepreneurs pivot and survive and grow. And we've been evolving since the pandemic and helping businesses access capital through our funding program, as well as our education program. And I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to have this conversation with Dynasti, who was one of my scholars in the Goldman Sachs 1 Million Black Women program. I want to say cohort 4. Is that right, Dynasti?
That is right, cohort 4.
Awesome. And she was an excellent scholar, as all of mine are, but she's really demonstrated how to execute. And when we were having our conversation and we were walking through all of the things that she had accomplished post-graduation and the outcomes that she was experiencing, I thought to myself, Dynasti, we have to share this with other people who may still be struggling in finding their way in executing their strategy and not seeing results the way that they would like. And perhaps there's something that we have done that could help someone else. And so that was really the premise of why we wanted to get together and have this conversation.
I'm really excited for it. And I will tell you that there are some days, and many of you probably align with this if you're business owners as well, that some days I'm like, have I found my way, or am I just putting one foot in front of the other? But I think a big piece of this has been through the 1 Million Black Women in Business program with Goldman Sachs and Cynthia, through your advisement, really being able to know the clear infrastructure and cement that in a really strong way has helped me. So I think a big piece of this and a big piece of what we're going to talk about and what I've learned along the way is you could say like, oh, I'm figuring it out day by day and I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants in this. But the reality is there is a formula. It does work. There are things that you can do to really hone in on cementing that formula for yourself as a business owner and being able to learn that, to have the space to learn it, to have the space to be pushed like a mentor and advisor like yourself around how to keep going and not get distracted by shiny objects that are not along the right pathway really has been key to the growth that Tayden has experienced. Being able to expand the team in the way that we have and build the infrastructure that we have has been critical and just something that I celebrate each and every day. So there are days where I'm figuring out how to put one foot in front of the other, but I would also say that I've got a really strong plan in my back pocket that helps me to know what pathway I should be walking down.
And that creating that plan was not an easy road, and I want to dive into that.
I will say that you could imagine thinking about, starting with the work that we did together in 1 Million Black Women. So the Goldman Sachs program that's designed, just an incredible program. And I just give so much kudos to what they have designed and putting incredible folks like yourself in front of us to be business advisors and to walk with us along the way through each step. I found myself every week coming to our conversations like, I've got my homework, I've got my 10 questions, and then I've got my other ideas. I can remember doing that homework sometimes, like rocking Taylor to sleep. And then I'd be like, wait, and I also have one more question that I got to add to the list for Cynthia. And I'm sure it was like, what are these questions coming from? But for me, it was really about the key foundations of through the program, I really understood that there were these elements that I had to get clear on, this framework that I had to understand and know deeply. And I hadn't really asked myself those questions and really hadn't taken the time to step back and go, what is your marketing strategy? What is your target? What is your unique value proposition? What is the infrastructure for how you're running your business? And really, what's the team that you need? And not having those things in place were really keeping me in the place of what I would say is being someone who was very much working in the business. I don't know that I would have called myself a true CEO when I first started that program, because I was definitely just sort of running to what was right in front of me and what was in front of my calendar, and not stepping back and really thinking about how all these elements could be connected and tied together.
It's an excellent point that leads me into our conversation. And that starting off is you don't know what you don't know. So 24 months ago, 2 years ago, when you were looking at your business, you, and I mean that in general, not just you, Dynasti, feel that you're stagnant and you're uncertain about, how do I fix this? What is it that is missing? What is it that I'm not doing to help my business grow? Why am I not closing more deals? What is happening in this business that seems a little bit out of control, but I have no idea why? And that is sometimes where scholars like yourself come in to any program, whether it's 1 million or it's Start.Pivot.Grow, or if it's another accelerator out there, and there are many of them that are out there. You don't know what you don't know until you're introduced to the formula, so to speak. And so is that where you found yourself, is I don't know what I'm doing here?
That is exactly where I found myself trying to Google, trying to ask questions of peers, and we would have some good conversation, but it really boiled back down to is I needed a system and a plan, and I didn't know where that plan was going to come from. So I think about this and I liken it to where you're like, you know what? I have no idea what I'm going to eat this week. So every day you get up and you're like, okay, well, I'll just wait until that moment comes. And then that moment comes and that moment passes you and you get busy. And then it's 3 hours later and you're thinking, I never ate because I never had a plan. I never knew what I was going to eat in the first place. And that is exactly where I was coming into the program, where I truly didn't know. And so I was flying by my seat. And there were many times where I didn't eat. I was like, oh, this is the pricing client that you're providing in front of me. I don't know if that's right or not, but I don't have a system or an approach to know what my own unique value proposition is to know, am I charging correctly? So I'll just say yes. So I was saying a lot of yeses, but they were not intentional yeses. And there weren't any no's in that conversation. And I wasn't sure what I should be saying no, or what I should be saying yes to, or what I should be saying, hey, it's not a yes yet, but I need to build the system so it can be a yes. And so really came into the program looking for answers, looking for structure, looking for, I want to see my business be successful. I want it to be sustainable. And I want us to have the impact that I know that we can have in the social sector market. How do I do it?
That's an excellent point. And often when we are in our growth groups, in our business advising sessions, one of the things I talk about is there's a difference between hustle, and then there's a difference between managing an enterprise. And hustle is sometimes where we start, where we'll take any deal, we'll take any client, we'll take any opportunity as long as it's making money so that we can keep the lights on. But it's not always necessarily aligned with where we should be, what we really want to do, or the price point that we want and should be charging. And what I've found over the years is that small business owners have not done the work in order to figure out how much you should be charging, what business you're really in, and who your target market really is. And so let's start there. Let's start with the very first step when we introduce to you all market and who your customers really are. And I remember you having several aha moments of, I've been talking to the wrong people, or I haven't been in front of the right people.
Yes, and you're bringing me back, and now I'm getting like emotional because I'm like, oh, Dynasty, you were talking to everybody and not the right person at all. You were just having conversations out there. And I think a few things that I learned by working first on the target market is I was talking to the wrong person. I was not talking to the decision maker. So I was having all of these conversations, sometimes several conversations, and they weren't leading anywhere. And I was like, well, why didn't they select my proposal? Or why didn't they want a further conversation? And I started to realize through some of the steps that we took and some of the analysis of the market, well, Dynasti, they didn't make the decision. They're not the decision maker. They don't own and make decisions on what's going to happen. They don't get to decide if we have the budget for this or the dollars for this. And they don't decide whether or not it's a priority for the organization right now. So being able to start with, all right, I need to really look at and think about who my target audience is and who I should actually be talking to and who's that primary buyer was a big aha. The other aha that I had is that I was talking to so many different people at the time that I had 3 different businesses. I was like, oh, I'm going to be B2B. I'm going to be B2C. I'm going to be B2G. I'm going to be B to everyone. And if you think about that, I smile now when I think about that and think, Dynasti, I just don't know what you were thinking, but that's okay. We all learn from it. But at the time, what I realized by doing the exercises that we did is that requires completely different marketing, completely different operational infrastructures, completely different team members. I, at one time, I think you remember this, but I was like, I'm going to have a product and then have a service line. And it was like, but you need totally different skills to actually run those and to market and to build effectively. So what was out there was I didn't have a unique value proposition in the market because I was talking to everyone and therefore I was actually talking to no one. So really stepping back and honing in on who my target buyer was and what level of conversation I should be having with them, how to find them, how to have those conversations. And then 2, getting really clear on what the product was, what we're actually selling, and what we really want to hone in on also made a difference because it allowed for me to step back and go, right, so now we can be more intentional about how we market to that target buyer and not give that target buyer mixed messages. And I think, that's probably the reality for a lot of business owners where we come in and we're like, we just want to say yes to everything and we can sell to everyone. And somebody comes to us and they say, can you do this? Yep, I can do this. Can you do this? Yes, I can do this too. Yes, I can do this too. And the reality is what our buyer hears is that you can't actually do the thing that I'm looking for because you're saying yes to everything else. You're saying yes to what everyone else needs in the organization, but you're not saying yes to me. And I haven't heard that from you. So really thinking about that.
That's an excellent point, and that is so important, especially when you're developing a business model, which a lot of people skip and don't do. They do not have a clear idea of what their business model is. Therefore, they don't know what problem they're solving, what solution they're bringing to the table, and therefore it's very difficult to identify who you should be talking to and what message you should be sharing and distributing across the channels where they will show up. And without that exercise, without doing that work, when you jump head first, you end up in a place that we talked about of stagnation and just trying to talk to everyone and not landing any deals. And when you start to fix that and you identify who the audience is, you start to see things change because your message becomes clear to the people who are looking for what you have to say, right?
Right. I will also say you become more confident in having the conversations because when you go into a room, and just for full transparency, I would go into conversations previous to this and I felt a lot of nervousness. And what I realized through our conversations, through the program, through your advisement is some of that nervousness was being new to the market, a new business owner. That's going to be a part of what happens. But also I was nervous because I didn't know what I was really selling. And I couldn't really go in and confidently say, this is what I can do. This is how I can do this. And therefore, this is what it costs and stand behind that because I wasn't clear on what I was selling and how that should be positioned in the market and what my business model was around it. So I was taking whatever I could take. But a lot of that nervousness just boiled down to lack of confidence because it was lack of clarity. And I believe that the clearer you get on who you're serving, your business model, and then your unique value proposition, you go in a lot more confidently to those conversations because you know this is our thing. This is what we can do. And you're clear on like, this is what we can do, but we're not going to do because that is not a part of our model and what we're really wanting to serve our clients with.
I love to hear that. Clarity brings confidence is essentially what you're saying. And so we have to do that work to become very clear as to what solution we're bringing to the marketplace and whom you're serving in the marketplace.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those where that clarity was really powerful for me. But then also, once we got clear on the target market, that unique value proposition, what are those key ingredients that I was bringing to the table? They started to realize through our conversations and our work that there were key things that I did bring to the work and to how we could serve our clients that weren't coming out. We had a lot of conversations about my website and how there was a ton of text, y'all. I love a good essay. I'm like, I will write all day long. There was so much text. And I can remember our conversations like, but what do you do? And what's the point? And where are you? And then I had to take a step back and start to really read it. And I was like, our unique value proposition, Cynthia, don't you see it? It's like, we've got 7 paragraphs here. It is the 6th paragraph. Line 2, that is our unique value proposition. And Cynthia's like, but why isn't that like on the header? And why is all this extra text here that we don't need that doesn't name who we are? So being able to step back and even go, what do you uniquely bring to the table? How do you uniquely name that? And how do you actually put that in the forefront so that your target audience they don't have time. They don't want to go dig for it. They want you to tell them. They want you to be confident and clear about what you're telling them. And they want to be able to see that and all of your marketing assets and what you talk about and your proposal and what you bring to the table. So really getting clear on those 3 to 5 like key ingredients, if you will, that make up the mix of who you are as a business and what you bring, making sure those are at the forefront and not buried in the weeds. And I was definitely like burying things in the sand, thinking more text is better, but people weren't even getting to that point. They weren't reading it.
Mm-hmm. And so we had to dig into the data, into your control panel, into your analytics, and we had to look and see when are they leaving? When are we losing them? Is this really effective? And if not, how can we capture them in 3 seconds? And for those of you who are watching the broadcast, you only have 3 seconds. You do not have very much time for someone to discover you, to process who you are, and to understand you can solve their problem. You are what they've been looking for. And if you're wanting to make them do the work to figure it out, it's not going to happen. And that's when they leave and they won't do business with you, right?
It's true. And they really get to the place where they're like, I didn't know that you do these extra things, or I didn't know this is what you bring to the table. And so sometimes we can actually be our own worst enemy by not being clear around these things because we are not selling them what we could, and then we're not having those continuous conversations. And I had to realize 2 things through this journey. One is getting really clear, but also really clear on the additional things that you can do for the client that maybe you don't put on the website, but you know are in your back pocket so that you can be intentional about the conversation. Because one thing that I've realized is that we are always selling to our client. Cynthia will attest to this, but there would be times I would be like, Cynthia, this client just renewed with me and I didn't know they were going to renew with me. I was just having a check-in conversation with them. And Cynthia would smile and I finally got it. I know she was like, I'm waiting until Dynasti gets it, but I finally got it. It's a continuous conversation with your clients to continuously sell to them, to understand what they need. And there's going to be a time, right, where you might not be the right person for what's needed next. But a lot of times you are, and you won't know that, and they won't know that unless you are having some sort of continuous dialogue that isn't just about the deliverable that's in front of you that you're giving to them, but it's about, tell me what's going on in your business. Tell me what's happening in your strategy. Tell me what's keeping you up late at night that isn't about this deliverable, but it's coming because it changes the conversation. The other thing I will say, Cynthia, is distinctly thinking about the exercises that we did around pricing and revenue. And I can remember in 1 Million Black Women in the program, there's a lot of talk about working through the spreadsheets and financial models and seeing the numbers roll. Well, I can tell y'all very distinctly that I remember being very nervous about looking at my numbers and profitability and feeling this is going to be overwhelming. And now I look at a spreadsheet literally every 3 days. I'm like, give me the spreadsheet. Let me see the numbers roll. And the reason for that is because the numbers were not rolling. I put my numbers in and it was like, oh, let me tell you how these numbers are not rolling. Let me tell you how you are not going to survive, much less be a business in the next 6 months if you don't change things about your model, who you're talking to, how you're structuring pricing, because I was giving away that unique value proposition I just talked about. I was giving it away for pennies. And the amount that I was doing for and with clients and not charging them for and not actually putting that value out there in terms of what we were bringing in terms of revenue, really painful to talk about. But I'm really glad, because even in that program throughout, one of the things that I immediately started to do once I saw those numbers not roll was I started having conversations. And I know, Cynthia, you remember this, because I started talking to all my clients and be like, okay, so let's talk about where we are, what this next phase of work looks like, and what renewals are going to look like. And that was one of the immediate shifts that changed the trajectory of where our revenue is coming in today, was having those conversations. I would have never had those conversations if I had not had the advisement of you, Cynthia. So those one-to-one advisement conversations in the Goldman Sachs program, because I wouldn't have known. I would have kept doing the same thing. Sometimes we just keep doing the same thing and we expect a different outcome and we have to do something different. And that was my something different. And it changed immediately, where I knew 2024 was going to be a very different year than 2023 was.
I think I'm so happy that you brought that point up, because when I think about large companies that reach 1 million, 5 million, and then 10 million, which is certainly possible in the US. And if you open up to the international market, sky's the limit. There is no limit to what we are able to do. Even in this weird economy that we're in, businesses are still making money when you look at the numbers. Don't be afraid of that. But what's most important is your conversations, your understanding of where do you fit in the life or organization that you're serving, and what value are you bringing, and how are you helping them, your client, achieve their goals. That's something that we often do not either understand or overlook. We're not a part of the system. We're just over here, an outsider. You got to get inside, and you have to be a part of some of those decisions. You have to be invited, because they can't do without you, or they don't want to make a decision without you, or they don't want to purchase without you. And until you get to that point, it is very difficult to go from a $5,000 contract for 3 months to a $100,000 contract for a year, which is how you get to $1 million. Right?
Absolutely. It's exactly how you do it. And being able to have those conversations, one of the big contracts, there were several that we signed at the end of 2023, going into 2024, were those 6 and 7 figure contracts that were for a year. And we're continuing to work with the client. And 2 big things that I would say came up. One is being in the room for those conversations and seeing things like, hey, I know that, you all are going through annual planning. So can we talk about what are your priorities? I'm just really interested in what's coming up there, because that immediately led to a conversation around, we're doing this and we're thinking about this. Oh, well, I didn't realize that, but my team and I could do that. And we already know you. We have a relationship. We know the organization. So it is much easier to do it with us because we know you and we're a trusted partner than to go out and start from scratch again with someone that you don't know and don't have that relationship with. So that was an immediate yes to that contract and that engagement. Another contract was really about, again, having those annual planning strategic conversations. But now we get to the point where once a quarter, we step back with our clients. And one of the things that we have implemented is this quarterly kind of culture check, because of the work that we do, where we check in and we're like, let's just not talk about how we're doing and do we make the deliverables on time? That is a very tactical piece. So that's like number 4 on the list. Number 1 on the list is, hey, what's happening inside of the organization? What's organizational health look like? Are there changes coming with their team? Are there changes coming for you? How are things looking for you? Because again, it leads to a different conversation. It leads to what you're describing around that trusted partnership, and it helps you. There have been times where we have a contract right now that we just signed where the client has been a client of ours for a couple of years, and we have said, hey, here's the work that we're going to do. That wasn't the work that we started with, but that work has evolved. We have signed that contract, and we've been able to bring on an external partner that was another person that we've known and worked with behind the scenes for years in different ways, and brought them in to the agreement because the client said, this is what we need. And we were like, hey, we can do that. And we know someone else that could support that could be another partner for you. So again, I think there is just something about less about, because sometimes in my own head, I was like, I am not a good seller. Like, I don't sell well. And I had to kind of let that go and think about, you know what, maybe in your head, you don't sell well, but what you are actually doing is you are thinking about the client. You are thinking about the transformation for the client. You are not time boxing yourself. You are not putting it just on the deliverables that you agreed to in that initial agreement. You are thinking bigger picture about what it takes to help that client get to the end state, that next vision that they are looking for, what looks different in 3 to 5 years by working with you. And by doing that, it allows for you to have a different set of conversations and take selling off of kind of your shoulders. And it's more about, how can I help my client get to where they want to be in the next 3 to 5 years? A very different conversation, still a selling conversation, but I think it just looks different. And I say that for folks who are like, oh, I hate talking about numbers and selling and what they need next. But you shouldn't, because you're in the business to help them and help them transform, and they're asking you to. So we actually do our clients a disservice if we're not willing to ask for that additional information, ask for what's going on across the organization so that we can help them connect some of those dots, because they don't have time to. It's our job to sit in that seat.
It's so important. And so now I want to talk about the tactical aspect and talk about what work did we put in to get you to that point, to be in a position to ask the right questions. And all of this information is pertinent whether you are a product-based business or you're a service-based business. It's the same principle. It's the same work. You're just in a different industry. But there were certain things that we had to go through, and we worked together, I think, post-graduation. I want to say 8 months, 9 months or so. We're still working together. And it was on a weekly basis, but there was a lot of work to still be done in order for you to be ready to execute and implement the plan. First, we had to come up with the plan, right?
Yeah, we had to come up with a plan. We had to come up with then where we're going to take the plan. And I will say this. There was an operations module. We were talking through how to automate your sales practices, your business practices. That module really, that was a hard one for me. I'd say, like, it's like all the modules were hard, but hard in good ways, y'all. But like this one in particular, I had to really step back and go, oh, wow. I was like, I have a system. I know how I'm getting paid. That's what they tell you, like, have a website, know how to get paid. I didn't have a system, y'all. I was getting paid, but like, I was not getting paid in great ways. I was getting paid, like, clients were paying me like 90 days later, 180 days later. It was not a good place to be in. And I didn't have a system for, if I did find my target buyer and I did want to have a set of conversations, what were the questions I should be asking them specifically? What was the next place that I would go to in order to get to proposal and discovery process? It would take me 10 days to write a proposal. And you can imagine with other competitors out there, they're getting the proposal done because they've got it automated in a day. And I was losing some business because they were like, you took too long. Well, yeah, you're right. I'm wrong. And so how do we do that? And so one of the things that we did do over 8 months was really step back and evaluate what are the systems and the infrastructure that's needed in order to build the business and to sustain the business and to really help grow where we were from last year into now. And so as part of my growth plan coming out of the program, we worked on identifying, here's the system that we're going to be implementing. So we went with Zoho from a CRM perspective. But one of the reasons why, and this is not necessarily a sell to Zoho necessarily, but one of the things that you and I talked about very concretely is I didn't want to be working out of 20 different systems, one from an expense standpoint, but also because I knew that I was doing that now and I was still doing a lot of stuff on paper and in Google spreadsheets, and it just wasn't organized. And I both could not sustain that. Obviously, I was sending in proposals late, but also it wasn't going to be set up for success where I knew that I also wanted to bring people in. Nobody was going to be able to come into that and pick up and take things off of my plate. So it's unsustainable. So really stepping back and saying, all right, we're going to use this. This is going to be our choice for a system. But then you and I spent time just mapping out, okay, what's step one? And then when they do this, if somebody fills out the form, what happens? And then once they have that call scheduled, then what happens here? Wait, do you have a template? Do you already know what questions you can ask for the call? And going through that. It was tedious. It is tedious. But I will tell y'all that coming on the other side of that, what we have built is really fantastic. I have brought on a business operations associate in the last year. We have brought on a client project manager in the last year. We are in final stages of interviews for an associate consultant, and they can just go into the system and jump in. Obviously, onboarding still is a part of that, but I was able to do that because we had systems in place where it wasn't just in my head, it wasn't on paper, and we could sustain the model in a different way. So that sort of mapping was really important. I will also say that sort of mapping was really important because you can go out, y'all, and you can buy any CRM. It does not matter what you buy. If you haven't done the work of mapping out what you want it to do from A to B, and if somebody actually chooses C, what happens there? And then if somebody goes for a D, like how do you think about what happens there to bring them back into the structure? Your system will not work for you. I just want to be clear about that. Whatever system you invest in, if you do not do the legwork of the mapping, it will not work or it will break fast. So it is both the work of figuring out this is the system that I want, but to me, you could choose any system. You have to think about how you want that to work for you and how it works to serve your business. I'll say one last thing. One of the things that I distinctly remember is we were having this conversation and we were talking through, well, how does the target buyer come to us? And I was like, the person who I thought was a target buyer who's not would just get on the website and they would, fill out the website form. I was like, but this buyer, I know this buyer. I have worked with and for this buyer who is our true target buyer. They're not going to do all that. They're going to either email me directly or they're going to ask to schedule a call. So we intentionally set up some systems where if an email came through, we had some templates set up where we could be like, great, here's the next step. Here's what we can talk through. And on the website, if you go to my website now, you will notice we have a contact form and we do have that. But if you start to click on some of the links where it says schedule a call, it doesn't take you to the form. It takes you to the Calendly to immediately book a call. We immediately saw immediate bookings. We have 5 of our clients who signed this year came through just scheduling a call. They never filled out the website form. But you have to know your target buyer and you have to study them and research them to know they're not going to do all that. They don't want 5 forms. And then when you get on the form, you got to answer 5 questions and they want 5 paragraph long. Your job is to get them on the call. And every buyer is different, right? But knowing that and leaning into that is really important because I think sometimes we build the systems around what we want and we need, but you are not a business owner to build for what you want and need.
Right.
You are in the business to help the person with the problem that they have. And so therefore your systems need to reflect how they operate and how they behave and what they need.
I think I want to cry right now because you have summed up what I've been trying to say for so long. You have to remove your personal ego from this analysis. You have to understand your customer inside and out, everything about them. It is so critically important in order for you to develop a process and a workflow that matches how they work. It's about them. It's not about us and what makes it easy. I want to wake up at 10 a.m. and I don't want to start working till 11. And then I'm going to stop working at 5 because I don't want to be bothered with my client. You probably should not be in business.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the reality. And let's be clear, as a parent, I'm doing all this as a parent as well. And so as a new parent, I'm trying to find the balance of like, oh, I was up until 3 a.m. rocking the baby, like what happens there? But there is an element of you can still have your boundaries. Like I do not take calls on Saturday and Sunday. I'm not going to do a discovery call with you because if I do a discovery call with you on the weekend, you might think that is how I work and that that's okay when we sign a contract and work together. So those boundaries aren't there. But there are also, I am based in Nashville and half of my clients are in Central Standard and Eastern, but the other half of my clients are on the West Coast. And a big piece of that is we have set up systems where I know who those clients are. And so I'm like, okay, on certain days of the week, there are days where I have scheduled and they are blocked and they are protected, where these days I work a little bit later. I work until 6 or 6:30. And those clients can have those meetings. Those clients, if you talk to them right now, I'm confidently, and I can say that over the last year, because of those changes that I've made, they have not missed a beat. They don't worry about like, oh, am I calling you too late? Or is it in like the wheelhouse or not? They just know the work is happening. We're having the conversations and things are getting done because I've created that space for that to be the case. But we have to your point, know that that is our client, know what we need to do to serve them. And then instead of being reactive and being like, I can't believe they call me at 7 p.m. I don't take clients like that. Create the space. Say, you know what? On Mondays and Tuesdays, I do. That is when I take the calls. I don't take them on a Friday, but I take them on this day. And so creating that space and having some of those boundaries, but doing so in a way that leans into, I'm hearing what the client needs. So now I need to figure out how to match my boundaries and what I want from a sustainability perspective into this. The other thing I will say is the first few years are just not going to be perfectly sustainable. I keep seeing all this conversation around like, and how do you sustain and like, how do you get rest? And you will. I actually got a lot of sleep. I've gotten a lot of sleep over this last year, even with a toddler. But I will tell you, it has been about being intentional. It is about having systems in place. It is about then having those systems ready to hire people. And it has been about having the advisement that you and I have had where week to week, we've been able to have conversations that remind me of, wait, are you about to make a move that adds more time, more manualness, something to the business that isn't value added to the client nor to where you're trying to go? And those conversations have been so critical because they have saved me. They have gave me that sustainability. They have made me feel like I could have sustainability as a CEO and as a business owner and still meet the needs of my clients and have all of that and then still be there and be able to say, you know what? I am going to end client meetings early on Wednesdays so that I can take my daughter to gymnastics. We're like working on her. We're like, all right, Simone Biles, where you want to go? She's like, I don't know yet. No, she loves it. But, being able to be and have that schedule is a lot about intentionality, but it's also about systems. It's about knowing your client. It's about building systems around them and not just about yourself too. And I had to learn that the hard way, but in a really good way that I now think I wish I always built it like that.
That's an excellent point. And so what I would love to do is recap, and then I'm going to talk really quickly about how did you pay for this? Because there may be people on the call who are like, that's all well and good, but all of that seems like it costs money. And to be able to hire people and put them in the right positions is another investment of capital that some may feel that they don't have. So I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. But essentially what we're saying is that there's a process to your business that maybe you haven't truly design just yet. And that is every operational function in your business, you should have a process and procedures that is written so that if anyone picks up the book, they are able to do it the way that you want it to be done efficiently and effectively. And then you want to inlay the systems that you would use, whether that is technology or hopefully not manual, but if you have to do manual for budget reasons, then manual. Where's the data? Where are the documents? What drawer is it located in? Everything has to be written. It cannot sit in your head and think that it's going to flow and function the way that it's supposed to effectively so that you can grow. If it's in your head and it's not organized in some type of structure, it's almost impossible for you to grow because it's impossible to share with others to build capacity to serve the customer's needs. And so, process, workflow, and you work very hard on your workflow. I cannot say how. I have to say how proud I am that when you came back each week with your homework, you had worked out your workflow in your business operations and your functions that was so good and so intentional and so detailed, which was required in order for you to configure your CRM system and your bookkeeping system and all of the different technology that you invested in to make it work the way it's supposed to work, and to give clear instructions to contractors that you are hiring to build it out for you so that they could get the work done on time for you. That was another thing, is that if you don't have clarity in your processes and you haven't thought it through and you don't have a clear instructional guide to give to them, they're going to screw it up, and then you're going to blame the contractor and say it was their fault when it's not. It's yours, right?
It's true. And I didn't immediately rush. At the end of 2023, we saw a difference in where the contracts signed were coming in, where the renewals were coming in. And I was really excited about profit. And then I said, you know what, I need to build these systems. And part of the reason for building the systems first was exactly to your point of, if I didn't have that written down and out of my head and started to build the system, and I was going to give something to a contractor, and then they weren't going to do it the way that I thought that they should do it. And then I would say it was on the contractor. But the other piece of that is, by laying out the systems and writing down the SOPs and doing more of that work, I could get really intentional about tying names or potential titles to pieces of the work. You know what? I can do this, but I really need someone who can do this. And you start to see the names come in, right? So you're like, okay, this particular role can do all of these things. And it made it then easy to go in and think about who to hire and what to hire them for, because I could be very clear on what I was looking for and what was needed for the business, both now and as we continue to grow. And that's exactly what we've done and exactly how we're looking at things. As we continue to grow and grow our revenue, I feel very confident that each person in their role knows what their job is in order to reach that next level that we are headed towards, and that they're very clear on the systems they need. There's no confusion there. And that feels like a really good place to be in. I will say two other things. One is that having your Start Pivot planner, like the growth planner, and being able to work through that was a helpful tool to have, because what I came out of the Black Million Women in Business program with Goldman Sachs program was, I came out with my growth plan. And that was a lot of work, but I love that. I like look at that plan and I look at it not from the standpoint of it looks great. I actually use that plan. But I took that and I took your planner and I use it every single week to check in on what my progress is, what I'm working on, what did I plan for, what should I be doing, so that I'm really intentional about the work. One big thing that I have learned, and it's been a powerful lesson for me, but I had in my head that, oh, at the end of the year or in January, that is when you strategically plan for the next year. Y'all, you need to be planning right now, because what you can do is, if you plan right now for next year, you can do last year what I did, which is I saw those numbers because I was doing planning through the program. And I was like, wait a minute, these numbers, I am not going to survive another year. And I was able to go in and renegotiate. If I had waited till December, those contracts would have been signed or those renewals wouldn't have happened, and I would not be in the place that I was in. So that is one. So if you are thinking about strategic planning and you do that as a business owner, one, if you don't, you should. Two, you should be doing it right now. Think about like right now being the time that you do that and not waiting until Q4. The second thing is, when we think about grants, one of the exercises that we did as a part of the Goldman Sachs program is we talked about pitching and we talked about grants. I was like, yeah, I have a grant strategy, but my grant strategy was to go out and look for grants and look for funding. One key thing, and I remember this sheet so well that Cynthia, you and I worked on as a part of the program, was actually to step back and go, what are you going to do with this money? and look at what you're bringing in, look at your expenses, look at the things that you want to do that maybe you can't pay for through what you're earning right now, and think about what you want to do. I applied for a grant and I got this grant and I was so excited. One, because I got the grant, but two, because y'all, I didn't miss a beat. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with that. And that was invest in continued coaching and advisement with Cynthia, it's with you. And then two, to actually invest in having the CRM built and built out in a way where I would have it built and have a partner who could help me build. And so being able to have you as that partner to help me think about those workflows and then being able to use that grant to invest in the system, I'm getting ready to write an email to the folks that provided the grant, one, to say another thank you, but to also say, because of that grant, here's what I used it for. And here's what we've done in revenue in 12 months. Here's how we've grown. Here are the number of folks that I've been able to hire, the structure that I've been able to build, and to be able to say, this paid back dividends from what I had before. If I had just gone in and been like, oh, I just need a grant, I would not have known how to use it, where to use it, and would not have been intentional. And I'm not sure that we would be sitting here having the same conversation today. So I would just say, I've been in your shoes for folks who are listening, and I know what it's like to figure out like, hey, I don't have the money to invest in those things. You can have an intentional grant strategy, but be really intentional about, when I get these dollars, I need to be already ready to know, first grant, this is exactly where this grows. If I get another grant, great, I know exactly where this money goes, and having that intentionality.
You nailed it on the head. That's exactly where I wanted to go, and how you paid for it. And it's so important. And I talk to folks often about two things. One, if you've taken an accelerator, don't take another one. You already have you have the recipe, you have the details, you have the information, you just haven't executed. If it didn't work, you haven't executed. And if you, in spending time away from your business to go and learn something that you've already been introduced to just because, doesn't make sense to me. And so if you have had the privilege of being accepted into an accelerator or into a business education program, and you've gotten what you needed, but you're afraid to pull the gun or pull the trigger because you're uncertain about, how do I execute, then get with someone who can help you day by day, week by week, month by month, to execute and implement, so that you know what you're doing. And third is, applying for grants takes a lot of time away from your business. And if you are applying just to be applying, just to get money to put into the account without any clarity of how you're going to allocate the funding and where it's going to go and how it's going to generate a return for you, you're wasting your time. It's yet enough. Mm-hmm.
All the things that you said are true. And it is one of the reasons why, when we immediately wrapped the program, I remember, you probably remember this, I remember saying to you, like, oh, you haven't seen the last of me. I'm going to figure out how for us to continue to work together, because I knew that part of my, you probably remember this, but part of my spending was on things, y'all. It was like all this professional development. It's like, why is my professional development line item so large? Because I was taking all of these courses and none of them were leading up to me actually pulling the trigger and like doing the work. Goldman Sachs was the first program where I was like, oh, I get it. And I'm learning in a meaningful way. And I just knew that I did not want to mess up the opportunity that I had to learn in the way that I did, and the growth plan that we built and all that was poured into me. I was like, I got to figure out how to keep this thing going. And that is where, once I got the grant, I was like, hi, so do you want to meet on Tuesdays? Like, when are we meeting? How often are we meeting? So that we can actually execute this growth plan. And this growth plan is why, again, we're having this conversation today, executing on it. But if I had gone through Goldman Sachs and learned all of that incredible knowledge and development that I got from the program and from advisement from you, and then the next month I had spent the grant money that someone had given me and went out and bought 4 more courses, I'd be in the same place. And so it really is about also this challenge of, like, we are always questioning ourselves, I think, early on our business journey of, what else do I need to know? Maybe there's something else. you got it. You have it. And you need someone who can help you remember that you have it, help you stay on the path to execution and not get in your own way by like, I need a little bit more. So let me go take this other course or do this other thing. I can tell you right now, you got it. It's right there in front of you. You've got to reach out and reach for it. And instead of staying stagnant, push yourself forward to do the work and to just, y'all, just work the plan. I think I say this to myself honestly every week where I pull up the planner, I pull out your planner, I pull out the growth plan. I'm like, work the plan. And I smile because I was just looking at it last week and I was like, and again, by working the plan, I'm actually hitting the goals that I said last year.
Yeah.
These feel unattainable. I will never hit these revenue goals. And we're talking in September. I'm like, oh, we're here. So now we got to set a new revenue goal because we got there already because I worked the plan.
That's the part that was so exciting because you keep coming back and saying, I've met this goal. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what we want. It works. I can't stress it enough. And this isn't, for those of you who are still on the call, I'm going to allow you guys to ask questions as we have 5 minutes here. But this isn't a sales call. This is a reality check that what we're talking about is all the businesses that you see that are 1 million, 5 million, 10 million and more, they do this work. They either hire someone to do it for them or they do it themselves and they dig it out. And when they do, the process starts to work for them because they're talking to the right people. They're bringing the solution to the problem. They're creating value and it's clicking. When you find your people, it will work. I can't stress it enough. And so that's all we're really saying here. And so I'd love to I believe there was someone who raised their hand. And if you have a question, I'll take 2 questions real quick, and then we'll just close out here in just a moment. Does anyone have any questions? All righty, Ariel, and then Miss LA or Miss Law after her. Ariel, go ahead. Hopefully you're able to open your mic. If you can't open your mic, let me know if you can type it in the chat. Okay, okay, you should be able to now, Ariel. Yeah.
Okay, am I on? All right, thank you so much. I'm really blessed to be chosen. So yay, this has been very helpful. So my question for you, Dynasti, is around how you make your marriage work around this rapidly growing, expanding business, because I also have 3 children under 4 and in a marriage that I also need to prioritize. At the same time, the business is rapidly growing and the business feels like my baby and my priority in my life sometimes. So how do you structure your time to make sure that you're feeding into the business? And then a secondary question is like, how do you make sure that you are not just putting all the profit back into the business, but that you are supporting your personal financial goals and your family's personal financial goals and not just feeding everything back into your business?
Yeah, great questions. So one, before the Goldman Sachs program, when I got accepted, I had the conversation with my husband to say, all right, this is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to take. This is what I need. But I also said, what do you need? So we constantly are having that conversation on a week by week basis. Every day, or excuse me, every Sunday, we even go through and I'm like, all right, here are the days where I have these later meetings or I need you to be home by a certain time. And here are the days where I got it. I can figure it out. I can like have a call and have Taylor on the side here. So we have found a really good balance of just supporting one another by constantly checking in and saying, this is what, I need, but also asking like, what do you need as well? And he is also supportive and really excited. He jokes, half jokes. He's like, all right, I'm ready to retire. I'm ready to be, stay at home father, which he's like, I got other stuff that I want to do. But he gets really excited about the growth of the business and where we have gone over the last year. And so it's a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of just like checking in with one another and making sure that we create space for each other, but we all create space for our own individual needs as well. And then when it comes to how are we keeping and thinking about our own personal financial goals, we have those conversations. We have a really great accountant and bookkeeping team where we have some conversations. We've talked about the profit first methodology that I know Cynthia's dropped into the chat, but we have had some real conversation about what are our goals and what do we want for ourselves? What does that mean I need to pay myself right now and in the future and over time as a business owner? And so that's been an active part of the conversation. But my husband knows when we get a proposal. He knows when we win something. He knows when we renew something. He knows where we are with the work. And I think that has made him just be a huge champion and cheerleader of the business. But I also have some ownership in making sure that I don't just work on the business, and I'm making sure that I am like taking care of home too, and also spending time with my little one because she's young. We don't get these years back again. And so making sure that that space is there too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have one last one, Miss Law, if you'll unmute.
Hi, thank you for letting me on. This question is for Cynthia. I heard Dynasti say that she has your planner and your planner has helped her. Um, I need some type of planner to help me as well because my planning is all over the place right now. I mean, with family, with my businesses, with everything. So, listening to what Dynasti said about, the planning, and I do buy planners and I have planners and I do sit down and map things out, but sometimes I lose my way. So if I can find a strategy or a better strategy to help me stay within my path, that would be great.
Absolutely. So I dropped the link to the self-paced business growth planner course, which is online. In the very first module has the downloadable PDF business growth planner in it. I'm having a cough fit, so sorry.
Thank
I'll
you
jump
so
in here.
much.
I'll jump in here and just say that that planner in particular, the reason why it's been so helpful to me is it's more about the business and strategy and takes you through exercises to really walk through a lot of what we talked about today in a meaningful way. And I use that planner. I've tried to use other planners before and they just haven't worked for me. So I feel you there. But one of the things that I try to write down and try to ask myself as I'm going through each exercise in the planner is, great, like I'm answering these questions, but what's a sustainable way that I want this to go? So let's say 3 to 5 years from now, I'm not running the business. I'm just an advisor and I get to like earn the profit from it, but somebody else is the CEO. How would am I building it? Am I thinking about it in a way where somebody else could step in and run it? And I could just be behind the scenes. So asking my questions I'm going through the exercises is also helpful because sometimes you can plan for what's in the moment or what's over the next year. But if you start to think about like bigger picture and longer term, what I want long term, that is a helpful question of then planning your systems and supports in ways that you might think about it in different ways. So I would just like name that that is also key.
Perfect. Thank you for stepping in.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All righty. So just last few words. Again, I want to say thank you so much. There was so much work that you put into your action plan, your growth strategy, your utilization of systems, identifying the funding in order to pay for it, and then being brave enough to move forward. And putting in the work. And it wasn't easy. It was a lot of hours that you were dedicating to fixing or filling the holes that you realized you had in the operation in order for you to build a stable foundation to reach 1 million by next year and to achieve your revenue goals faster than what you expected once you were enlightened and you knew what you were doing.
Yeah, I want to say that I feel very lucky, but I will also say I feel very planned, and that helps a lot. But really grateful to your support, really grateful to the program, and just really grateful to my family who have allowed for that intentionality. And y'all, you can give a bottle in one hand and then be typing out your notes for your next business plan in the other. So I think I've learned the power of doing a little bit of both simultaneously.
Agreed. I want to say thank you, everyone who's still on the call, for registering, for being here. I hope that we've added value to you. This was a precursor to our launch of The Payoff, which is a web series that we will be launching in October with conversations like this, as well as our podcast. And I'm always hoping that I can bring value to you. So thank you, Dynasty, and thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cynthia.
You're welcome.